Hello, so this is the video for chapter 6. This is a pretty simple chapter, so hopefully I will get through it faster than I normally do. So this is about the revolution within. So essentially what we're looking at here are the ways in which the revolution impacts politics within the United States. For instance, we can see, one of the things we're going to see is a major increase in religious toleration across the colonies. We're also going to talk about the roles that women play. There's Abigail Adams, what a beauty. The roles that women played in the formation of this new country. We're also going to see the ways in which the new country tries to define itself, as opposed to what you can see here is the coronation of King Louis the 14th, and you can see that the whole country is separated by social class, and all kinds of opulence is being spent on just this one guy here in the middle. And we're going to see that the new country wants to avoid that at all costs. So one of the first ways in which the revolution affects liberty, or affects the way that the country is growing, is in the creation of state constitutions. Now, Connecticut was one of the first states to have a constitution, predating the other states by almost 100 years. But many of the states, upon the creation or the acceptance of the Declaration of Independence, begin to solidify their own nation. So they want to create constitutions that protect liberties within their own state. We also see that states in the North are beginning not just to accept religious toleration, but to encourage the growth of religious diversity. And you can see here a map of New York City separated out by the various churches, many of them being religions not normally allowed, or not previously allowed within the United States. We can see, Virginia being another state, right? It had previously been Anglican. We can see this Thomas Jefferson writing about religious freedom being an absolute necessity, and not because he cared particularly that people be religious, but rather that religious toleration was the #1 way to ensure that Americans were actually being treated equally or fairly and given their liberty. We can see here this new version of the flag, right? It's obviously not the flag that was chosen, but it has 13 stars, and it's surrounding the ideas of virtue, liberty, and independence, as opposed to God, country, and king, being some of the old virtues of the English colonies. Here we see a medallion or an engraving which talks about those things which should be most important to the American. And you can see that self-love and family are right there close to the center. And as you move further and further away, it becomes more and more about the country, patriotism, certainty, philanthropy, right? Ways in which people are supposed to be supporting their society, supporting their community as individuals, rather than relying on a crown or a king to do that for them. Another key to American liberty is this idea of agrarian self-sustenance. In other words, Americans believed that because there was so much land open to them, the way to be successful, the way to be free, was to depend solely on oneself. And one could do that by accessing land. Another way that the government, or the new governments, were trying to stop some of the bad practices of Great Britain was to allow for the free market. And what we see here is a complaint against a committee for trying to set up price controls. They believe that the colonists, or the new Americans now, right, we're beyond colonists, believed that the best way for you to be, or another best way to be free, would be to allow yourself to be subject to the market. In other words, if you're poor for your own reasons, not because the government set some regulation or set up a tax to put you in that position. Some of the places where liberty is at fault, which we're seeing here, is a cartoon depicting the way that loyalists were treated. The natives are actually representing Americans themselves, and this is the cruel fate of colonists, or loyal colonists in America. Essentially, it was not just wrong but illegal to want America to be under the English rule. Here we see a map of where, by the end of the Revolution, where the ideas of loyalty still exist. Most of the green are the places where people are in support of this revolution. It's the pink areas, the very tiny pink areas, mostly in New York and in the Carolinas, where Americans are still in favor of being a British colony. But you can see this is vastly different from what it used to be, where half or even a majority of Americans wanted to remain with England. Again, this is another British depiction. One of the reasons, it's an American depiction. One of the ways in which liberty is at fault or destroyed or not supported by this revolution is that one of the complaints against the king was that he used natives against the colonists, which means that the natives sort of fall on the wrong side after the war. They're seen as pawns of the British monarchy, and therefore they're not well treated. So while other places, the different religious minorities and women are seeing increases in their liberty, Native Americans are seeing a decrease. In fact, they're treated poorly, more poorly by the new American government than they ever were by colonial or royal governments. Another area we see growth for American liberty is in slavery. Ironically, of course, there were still slaves going on where we were embracing liberty, embracing freedom, but in the North there begins to be a growth of this desire to see slaves freed. Particularly, it starts in Massachusetts, but it spreads. If we're going to believe in liberty, then we have to believe in absolute liberty, not just liberty for white people, but liberty for the slaves as well. We begin to see slaves being taught to read and to write and to care for themselves for a future America where they will not be anyone's property. We see here a book of slaves slated for freedom. One of the slaves on this list belonged to George Washington. So even some of the Southern slaveholders were beginning to understand that slavery was not going to last, or that it couldn't last. I'm going to skip over that. We see liberty displaying the arts and sciences, right? In a new world of liberty, even slaves need to become responsible for the growth of the society. We also see, right here's a famous African-American preacher who, was adamantly speaking against the abolition of slavery. So we see the very beginning of this new abolition movement, which will one day lead to the complete abolition of slavery. So another area in which there's a growth of liberty is for women. Many women, including this Deborah Sampson, were actively involved in the revolution. Right, Deborah here dressed as a man in order to be able to fight alongside her brothers. We see here we see a cipher book. So women, young girls, in order to grow up to be young ladies, would do these different trainings, right? They would write in special calligraphy. They would draw these pictures, seen as women's work. But we see here sort of a support for the American cause, even in this young girl's lessons. We also see the compass for American women, right? American women are seen as the way to ensure liberty in the future. In other words, they call it Republican motherhood, this belief that you're taught how to be a good citizen, not by your father, who's out being a good citizen, but by your mother, who stays at home, and teaches you about the virtues of American citizens. We also see a change in the role between man and woman, man and wife, rather, that instead of having a man lord his power over the woman, we see a mutual relationship, or at least this desire to have a mutual relationship. Obviously, the women are not being granted the right to vote or even participation in government, but we see them, marriage being about companionship and about liking each other, rather than being a business transaction which supports or benefits the man. Oops, skip from there. We see here that the values that would once have been ascribed mostly to boys are being ascribed now to both boys and girls. Certain virtues such as charity or the ability to read are being extended both to men and women. And that would be about it. So what I want you to focus on for your notes, see, I'm real short on time, or I've got lots of time this time. What I want you to do for your notes is to be looking at the ways in which liberty increased for the average person in their home as a result of the American Revolution. And that's all for now. We will see you Monday.